Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Power Moves Young Leaders Network Edition. On this very special year-end episode, I was joined by three great guests. First off was Quinn Abbey with RE/MAX of Nanaimo, also Jalila Freve of RE/MAX Hallmark in Toronto, and Syd Hutchins of RE/MAX Crown Realty in Sudbury, Ontario. And the topic was motherhood and having that balance, if balance even exists, of being a full-time mom and a full-time realtor, and how you deal with the stress and the burnout and sometimes the unrealistic society pressures and expectations, and then also setting boundaries with clients and finding efficiencies in your business. We covered a lot of ground in this conversation, so you're going to want to watch the whole way through, whether you're listening to this episode or watching on YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning in. I know you're going to enjoy the conversation. From RE/MAX, this is Power Moves Young Leaders Network Edition, where we go in depth with some of the best young RE/MAX agents and brokers across the country to find out what it takes to be a top producing real estate agent and the moves that took their careers to new heights. My name is Wade Paterson. I'm an executive director with RE/MAX Canada, and I'm your host for this audio experience. And on this special episode, I'm joined by not one, not two, but three phenomenal guests who are here to talk about balancing motherhood with a successful career in real estate. First off, we have Quinn Abbey with RE/MAX of Nanaimo, who is a mom to a toddler and a 9-month-old, a devoted partner to her high school sweetheart, and a passionate realtor focused on serving her community. Jalila Freve is with RE/MAX Hallmark in Toronto, and she's a second-generation RE/MAX realtor with more than 12 years of experience. Jalila has two daughters aged 5 and 7, and blends her love for real estate with her passion for travel, community, and social justice. Syd Hutchins is with RE/MAX Crown Realty in Sudbury, Ontario, and has been an agent for nearly 4 years. She is a mom to a 2.5-year-old with another on the way, and her world revolves around her family and her passion for building strong relationships within her community. Quinn, Jalila, Syd, welcome to Power Moves Young Leaders Network Edition.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Excited to have you all on. This is going to be a great conversation. Quinn, I want to start with you. And before we get into motherhood and some of those specific questions, I want to learn about your background in real estate and sort of your real estate origin story. So you're clearly passionate about where you live in Nanaimo, but was real estate always a target career for you? Or when did you decide that that would be the career for you?
Good question. Real estate was never like the target career. It was always on the back burner. I had always thought about it, but I also kind of had those limiting beliefs, like who's going to listen to me when I'm like 20, trying to advise them on the biggest purchase of their life. So I did what kind of society told me to do. And I went to university. I got a business degree. I worked for some tech companies, and then we bought our first house and we renovated it. Talk about a big project. And that really just like inspired me just shortly after I ended up getting my real estate license, and kind of the rest is history. But I think it was just a really good reminder to like listen to that like kind of nudge inside, because it is something I always thought would be really special to do. And now I get to live that.
I love that. And then Jalila, it's interesting. One of the commonalities on this season of Power Moves Young Leaders Network Edition is that many of the guests are second generation realtors. And so for you, I'm always interested to find out the background of, was this a direction, like, was it just destiny from day one? You knew you would be a real estate agent, or what brought you into this career?
I mean, my mom was a single mom raising me in real estate, so I don't think that she necessarily really wanted me to go into the same business. I think she saw a lot of the sacrifices that she had to make in order to be successful and give me and be a great mom. And she was really great at it, but she never kind of pushed me there. And she always just like let me do what I wanted. So out of high school, I went to school for broadcasting and television, which I thought was fun. I loved it. It was really great, but I kind of wasn't ready to get into that business. So I went traveling, and I worked as a backpackers travel agent in Australia for a year, which was like the best experience. And I was really good at it. Like I didn't even know Australia that well, but I killed it. So when I came back, I thought, you know what, if I'm going to do sales and I'm going to have a good time, my mom has built this incredible business that's been really sustainable. And I thought, let's kind of join partners together. And I saw a lot of other really good, like dynamic parent teams. And I think that it's the kind of perfect blends of worlds. So it was a natural kind of transition for us. And I never would look back. Right. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. But
And
it
then
wasn't for me that I thought. I think it was, but I didn't know it at the time.
And then Syd, for you, I had the chance to visit Sudbury in 2023, come visit your office. It's a beautiful community. For you, was real estate always in the back of your mind, or what brought you into this career?
Never. Didn't even think about it. Honest to gosh, like I didn't know anyone who did it. I feel like years ago too, it wasn't as big of a business as it is today. So it wasn't super talked about. I went to college right out of high school. I took public relations. I was in that. It was a 3-year program, and I kind of just stumbled into this out of it. I don't really know how, but here I am. I don't know. I can't even tell you. I like try to play it back, and I'm like, did the whole school thing, and then I just ended up here and like never looked back, basically.
Interesting. So let's dive into some questions specifically around the theme of today's conversation. And Quinn, I think you win the award for bringing the youngest ever attendee to a YLN event, bringing your newborn Emma back in May to the Young Leaders Network event that was held in Victoria. So balance is a tricky word because it's debatable whether balance can even exist, but how do you deal with stress and burnout as being both a mom and a full-time realtor?
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, like I did bring Emma because I love what I do. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you love what you do, then it just comes naturally. And balance, as you mentioned, isn't always possible. So I kind of think of it as more like fluidity. Like we're just going through. It's a lifestyle now. Some days are a lot more challenging than others, but if you do love what you do, then it makes it a lot easier. So kind of how I balance and how I manage the stress and burnout. It hasn't always been easy. Like I will be the first to admit now that I've definitely dealt with mental health, and I did struggle and had a burnout about 2 years ago. But I think it's one of those things where we're always being pulled in different directions, whether it be a kid, a company trying to sell us something, clients, subject removals, closings, like there's always something. So what I've learned over the years is that we just need to get quiet and slow down. So some of the things that I implement now is like, yes, I'm busy and we have back-to-back meetings, but I give myself 5 to 10 minutes in between those, not including travel time because we need to get there on time. But I always try to give myself a few minutes just to like breathe, eat something, not a Tim Hortons bagel, just like actually eat something properly. And that really does help. And then also just like making sure that you love what you do and working with people that give you joy really make a big difference.
So in terms of actual calendar blocking, then are you almost building like 50-minute appointments rather than hour appointments? And then so you get back that last 10 minutes of each hour? Or what does that look like for actual time management in your calendars?
Yeah. So I used to have a lot of anxiety about time. I'm sure many can relate. So I'd always say like, oh, I'll meet you at 1 p.m. But now I kind of say I'll meet you around 1 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So then it just gives me the okay that if I'm a few minutes late, that's okay. And yes, I try to, I try to give myself like 10-minute buffers so that it's not back to back to back.
That's really smart. Jalila, so you've been in this industry a long time, as I mentioned, over a decade, 12 years. And while certain norms may be evolving a little bit, traditionally, men haven't really had the same level of a challenge when it comes to balancing the responsibilities of parenthood and a career focus. So how can mothers effectively champion themselves, prioritize their own success, and have a thriving business while still balancing all of those demands that come with motherhood?
I was really thinking about this before our call, and I thought, I have an incredible support system. And I feel very privileged in that I have a partner who is the main caregiver really in our household. He does pick up and drop off and a lot of things that I think if I didn't have that, my success would be a little bit harder to achieve. So I think that having a really strong, network of people, and it's not always necessarily like a grandparent. Sometimes it's having great neighbors, or good people who can help you out and you can rely on each other. Something that I learned early on is not doing it all, because I think that I did. Like, when you said that burnout 2 years ago, I was like, I was there. I was that person working too much. I wasn't anywhere properly anywhere. So I think I learned to kind of just scale everything back a bit. I couldn't do it all. I couldn't be everywhere. I couldn't be a drop off and at office meetings and here and there. So saying no to more, and because I had a high expectation for myself, but I think just having like a strong, like a strong kind of support system, if you have that privilege, is the key to success. Really, it has been for me.
And for you, 2 years ago, experiencing that burnout, like what was the boiling point or the tipping point? Was it that you just hit a spot of like a breakdown, or like what changed things for you? When did you actually have that realization?
I think there was like a stretch. I had two kids kind of close together. They're 20 months apart. So I think there was a stretch where I hadn't been home to put my kids to bed in 3 months. Like, it was something ridiculous. Like, it was a lot. And I would come home and then I would like do too much. And I was resetting the house because I was just trying to do it all. Like I said, I didn't have a cleaning lady. So the things that I did that changed really were the breaking point, just to like allow me to breathe, was having a regular cleaning service at our house. My only day off, like, shouldn't have been cleaning my house. Like, our house requires tidying every day, but that just changed my life. And I really did have to outsource laundry because it was something that I hated, right? That still needs to be done. And I would like, why don't we have AI to do our laundry? I do not know yet, because I will pay whatever it costs. But yeah, so those were two things that I think kind of like just letting go of, like, that I couldn't keep a perfect house, be making the money that or doing the business that I was doing, and being there present for my kids and going to the gym. Like, it's unattainable. So I think like letting go of that kind of societal expectation that we have everything together all the time, um, unlocked a lot for me. And it was a different beast in where we were in the market. I think when you work in our business, when it comes, you have to work it. And it's really easy to have all these like high expenses when you're really busy. But I found having things that you could turn off when you're not so busy, because not having a full-time, person who helps you at the house, but just having a cleaning service that you can maybe change to every other week or whatever, right? So being able to like adjust and let go was the key for me.
And then Syd, I want to talk a little bit about setting boundaries. And that might be something that's difficult, especially for new agents, because when they get a new opportunity, that's maybe something that's not coming on a regular basis. So they might feel as though they have to drop everything and take advantage of it. But in your experience, when is it okay to say no? And how do you communicate the boundaries that you have with your clients?
Well, disclaimer, I'm still working on it. Saying no is something I absolutely hate to do, but after having a child and another one on the way, I've learned that it is crucial. Not only for, your family balance, but like your own balance, your own mental health, everything like that. So I think I got in during our COVID market. So it was very crazy, but it was a lot of firsts for me. So I started when I was 23. It was my first career. I had just gotten married, and about 5 months in, I found out I was pregnant. So it was like so many firsts at once. But I had like a one set track mind. It was just to work, right? Because it was busy and I had to get it done. So I think over the years now, I'm not going to say I've mastered the balance, because I don't think that exists for anyone. And if people say it does, well, they're lying. But I've definitely learned from some of my mistakes on how I could do things differently and how I could talk to people who are like me, just coming into the industry and who are going to experience all these things and, tips and tricks that could help them. So when it comes to saying no, I don't like to use the word no. I try and find an alternative to give them before I say no. So whether it be, hey, like, instead of today at 4, can we do tomorrow anytime? Or can I set you up with someone on my team to go do the showing, right? Just to still validate them because people hate hearing the word no as well. And then in addition to that, it's, like setting boundaries for myself. So I did a deal in postpartum. I listed a property on my due date. Like I went back to work 3 days after a C-section, which was absolutely insane of me to do. So I've really learned to put myself first, to put my family first. So for example, like one of my non-negotiables is that I'm home at minimum 3 nights a week for dinner and for bedtime. Like I won't like go against that. And if it's a matter of someone on my team showing the property for me, like so be it. The client will still be taken care of, but I get to be home with my family, which is ultimately what I want to be doing. So yeah, I think it's a science figuring it all out. Like I said, I've yet to figure it out, but I'm still learning as time goes on. But I've definitely learned a lot. Like I said, over the past almost 4 years, that now with baby number 2 on the way, I'm going to be doing things completely different, but beneficial to both sides. Because just like Jalila said, like I could be everywhere, but I'm not mentally everywhere, right? So it's not fair to my client either if I'm there giving them 50% because I'm giving 100% to everywhere else, right? So it's just figuring it out.
Totally. Well, and a huge congratulations. Before we hit the record button, we were talking about the fact that you're expecting in March. And so I want to dive deeper into that because you mentioned it, baby number 2 on the way. What kinds of things this time around might you do different than with baby number 1?
Well, thank you. So right off the bat, I am taking time off. So I told myself, a minimum of 2 weeks, like at home. Like I don't want to, I know, which is so crazy. I say that to like my clients I'm signing now and they're like 2 weeks. I'm like, yeah. Like, and they're like, no, that's not enough. I'm like, no, trust me, it's fine. Last time I took 24 hours, right? So I'm taking 2 weeks minimum just to be at home. Like I can still answer the phone if need be, but I'm not going to show any houses. Like I have an amazing supportive team behind me that is going to help me. So I'm definitely staying put, and just implementing the same things I'm doing with my daughter now. Like I said, like being home minimum 3 nights a week, especially in our busy time. And when I put things in my calendar, so if like my daughter has a dance recital or it's her last swimming lesson, stuff like that, those are non-negotiables. Like I'm not going to miss those. I'm going to be there for those. So exact same thing with the second baby. And I was lucky too. My daughter got into daycare when she was 10 months old. So I'm going to do probably the same thing. Because again, like that's a good balance for me, to be able to have her somewhere where she's getting great attention. She's playing with other kids while I can focus on work. And then end of the day, recoup, bring everyone home, call it a day. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I like that you use the word non-negotiable there. And this is something I've heard from other agents is that appointments with family are still appointments, right? When you're telling that to a client, you have an appointment, that's still important, if not way more important to have that. And so feeling okay with filling up your calendar with some of those non-negotiables, like you said, Syd. Quinn, I want to come back to you and ask a little bit about efficiencies because, we can talk about stress and burnout and doing all of the things to try to protect our mental headspace, but sometimes we don't have a choice. We just have to get things done. And in order to do so, we have to be very efficient. So how do you keep yourself as efficient as possible?
Yeah. Well, I laughed, Syd, when you were talking about taking 2 weeks off, because obviously I have like a baby now. And so I went through that not long ago. And I think if someone is not in real estate, they don't understand. Like most people in Canada will get a full 12 months, 18 months. But if you love what you do, then you can still make that work and answer texts and stuff behind the scenes. So while some people might think that's crazy, and I had the same thing happen to me, it's doable if you can do it properly, and look after yourself. But yeah, so, and then talking about that, actually, that kind of does tie into efficiencies, because when you have a newborn, for instance, they're very demanding, almost more than clients. So my second wouldn't even take, she still doesn't take a bottle. So I need to feed her every 2 to 3 hours. And when they're newborn, that's even like every 45 minutes sometimes. So you have to get really good at being efficient and time blocking. And you also, like, what I found, which is hard because I'm a bit of a control freak and I love doing everything in my business. But what I've learned after having mental challenges myself and feeling burnt out is that delegating is so important. So I am a solo agent, but I have amazing connections in the office with other agents. So leveraging those referrals, like being able to ask people to show the home if you can't do it, and then write the offer later on, and be able to leverage people and work together is huge. And then just focusing on productivity. I've been lucky; both my kids are able to like sleep on out and about. And so I often kind of make jokes of it. And Emma and Ben are my assistants, and they come with me, get a beautiful carrier, so it looks just like a nice accessory, and off you go. So it does work, but you have to be efficient with your time.
I love that. And Jalila, I want to ask you a similar question when it comes to efficiencies. How have you found in your career that when you really just need to get things done, how have you made yourself more efficient?
Again, like hiring a VA changed my entire business. I think, being able to assign out a lot of the deal admin and paperwork and client follow-up, all of those small activities that took up a large part of my day, was the best investment I've made into my business in the past 12 years. So I think it was great to have an in-person office assistant. But I didn't need somebody 8 hours a day, 40 hours. You know what I mean? I just didn't need somebody full time like that. So it's been really great. I also, before, I think I prided myself in doing too much in the transaction. It's like, oh, look at me, I'm like cleaning the windows, or I'm vacuuming, like this, I'm so great, I'm so full service. And then when you get really aligned with how valuable your time is, you learn that that's like no longer a flex for me. Like being able to have somebody else handle those things is worth it, right? And I think that we try to do too much sometimes in the transaction. I don't think our clients kind of really expect that for us, especially as time goes on. They're not looking for somebody to be their, condo cleaner or their house cleaner. So really my demographic of my client evolved, right? So they understand, they also have kids. I really targeted like who my niche were, who my people were before they were first time buyers who wanted everything. And they're still great. And I love my first time buyers but they required a lot more work, right? I think when your clientele evolves, it allows you to be a little bit more efficient. And once you have great systems and a great kind of like back end in your office, that's when, for me, I feel more successful because I'm doing less and I'm making more money, right? So that's how I kind of moved my business into like a more power move style.
And for you, Syd, keeping on the theme of efficiency as well, understanding sometimes this job can be 24/7. Not that you should be on 24/7, but things come up all the time, and things that are important to clients, talking about one of their biggest investments that they'll ever make in the purchase of a home or selling their home. So for you, how do you carve out efficiencies in the way you do things?
So I am very fortunate. Both of my parents are retired. So when my daughter was born, like they were there to help a lot when I needed it, especially when my husband went back to work because he works underground. So he was not like he couldn't help as much as he wanted to throughout the day. So they helped me a lot pre-daycare. But if I was ever in a situation where, I was home with her all day and I had a showing come up, I would just bring her with me on the showing when she was, really young, because she was just in her car seat and she wouldn't make a peep. And, 99% of the clients, like, they don't mind. If anything, they love it. Like, right. It just, at the end of the day, it shows that you're like a human being and you're just, you're doing both things. Like you're a mom, but you're still showing up for them. And I think they really appreciate that. But kind of just to go back off of what you said, like how it's the biggest transaction of their life. I thought that over too, because I did like I said, I listed a property when I was on my due date, when I was supposed to be induced. And I had a conversation with the seller. She had inherited the house, but it was her first time selling, and she was moving to a different city to like start her life there. And, I couldn't discredit that. I couldn't be like, oh, I'm about to have my first baby, because she was also hitting a huge milestone in her life. Right. So I couldn't compare the two. Like we have to handle every situation. Like it's a really big deal for people, and you don't know sometimes the circumstances that they're in. So you just have to treat everyone with kindness and, still make a point that, like Jalila said, if you have a virtual assistant or an in-office assistant who's actually helping handle a lot of this stuff, don't make it out to be that. Like still be their point of contact, and you're handling it like with your full care. But, you're human, you're getting help, but the job's going to get done ultimately.
I love that. A final question I want to ask each of you is for people who are listening who may be a soon-to-be parent, which selfishly, that is me. We're joking before. This is my whole excuse for doing this interview. I'm just taking notes on what you're all saying right now, so I can be as prepared as possible. But if you could go back to day one with the knowledge that you have now, is there anything you would do differently in how you approach being a mother and or in your full-time job as a realtor? Given all of the knowledge you have now, going back to day one, is there anything you would do differently or advice you would have for soon-to-be parents? Quinn, we'll start with you.
Yeah. The big thing that comes to mind is just own it. I was so nervous to actually share that I was pregnant the first time. It was so busy. It was 2021 COVID market. It was, I couldn't, I was very, it was a busy time. If anyone was servicing clients at that time, they know. And I was nervous to share because I didn't think people would want to work with me, which is so silly. And I think back now when I had a coming soon post, like my favorite coming soon post that I was expecting. And it was the total opposite. I had more people actually reach out to me saying that they want to support a young family. And so it just is, and it attracts a different clientele, like you guys were saying, but it's so special because I now know what's important with like a nursery and what's important in backyard for kids and all of that stuff. So yeah, I say own it. Like it's important. We're all real humans. And I think people love seeing that. And then also just being as present as you can when you are with your kids or when you're with clients. We all kind of talked about that a bit, but if I can, I do feel guilty that in the past when I was playing blocks or doing whatever, I was thinking of clients and I was texting behind the scenes, pretending they didn't see me on my phone, but they do. And so that's one thing I've been trying to get a lot better at, is just being present when I'm with each role is different and being present there.
How do you, just to follow up on that, how do you kind of like reset or catch yourself in those moments or make sure that you're being mindful of that?
Yeah, it's a muscle, right? Like any mindfulness technique and stuff. Like I'm not perfect and I constantly will be pulled and then I'll be like, nope, I'm here. And I remember working with a therapist who told me like 10 minutes at a time is all the kids needs. And so being like, okay, 10 minutes, here I am. And their attention span is not longer than 10 minutes anyways. So yeah, you just have to keep reminding yourself.
Jalila, I'm curious for you, if you could go back to day one, would you do anything differently, and or do you have any advice for soon-to-be parents?
I wouldn't do anything differently. I think a lot I've noticed going to a lot of the YLN conferences, a lot of like young people coming up and asking me, like, especially women, young women. I'm thinking about having a kid and how do you balance it and how do you do it. And I think that there's never going to be like a perfect time and you kind of have to do it. And I honestly, if you can tap into like the mom community and you're going out, you're making so many more natural, organic friendships and relationships in your community. That's really some of the most valuable. I told you they would come home.
I love it.
And,
I love it.
you know, they're a good referral source is all I'm saying is the kids. So, you know, no, like they always say, like, get a dog. If you want to get to know your neighbors, get a dog. If you really want to get to know your community, have kids, because I know my neighbors better than I ever have before. You know, you're always out and about, and it kind of gets you out and forces you out. So there's never a perfect time, but there's always kind of more that's added in than I think taken out. So yeah, everyone's gonna learn it along their way and know that there's people like Quinn, Syd, and I who, if you ever wanted to like reach out and ask, that we're here for people. Um, and yeah, next time I want to hear from some of the single moms, because I think the single moms like Kelsey who run a crazy business and also do it on their own are like hugely to be commended. So let's hear from some of them next. Once you have a kid, Wade, we'll follow up in a year and see how it's been.
I love it. I love it. Great idea. And Syd, I know we touched on this a little bit, talking about kind of how baby number 2 would be a bit of a different approach, but just in general, advice for new parents, what would you suggest?
Just roll with it. Honest to God, that's all. I mean, I still don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm figuring it out. I mean, I don't think any of us really do, right? Every day is so different. And I mean, you could, like I said, you could think you have that balance and you have that routine, but any minute life can throw you a curveball and, you know, things change. So I think you just figure it out as you go, but ultimately, like, put yourself and put your family first, and the business will still come.
Well, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to do this, because I think it was a long overdue conversation. We know that this is a big theme that a lot of people have been asking about. There's even been little sub chats that have broken out in our Young Leaders Network group. So thank you all for being great examples of what it takes to be a great parent and also an incredible real estate agent. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Power Moves Young Leaders Network Edition.
Thank you so much, Wade.